Okay, good evening. This is April 10th, 2024, Planning Board. Um, Pam, can you start us off with attendance?
Michael Gore,
Present.
Austin Groner,
Here.
James Barr,
Here.
Robert Romer,
Here.
Michael Lau,
Here.
Eric Nyland.
Here.
Okay, our first item tonight is the review of the OSRD bylaw workshop information. And I think we wanted to talk about what was going to be in the presentation and how long it was going to be. So Pam, do you want to give everyone an overview, kind of what was proposed, and we can discuss it?
Yeah, I hadn't realized that the presentation that Randall Arendt was expecting on giving was 5 hours long. So he wanted us to schedule it from 4 to 9 on May 1st, which seemed a little bit long. I spoke to him a bit about it, and he said he could reduce it to probably 3.5 at the minimum, maybe 4 hours. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that and discuss in greater detail the forum and if we wanted to continue with the May 1st date or consider rescheduling. We did the draft of the flyer, but I haven't distributed or advertised anything yet because of in light of the information.
Yeah, when
I
I
thought it would
saw
be 2 hours maybe at most.
that was kind of what I was expecting as
Yeah.
well. So first, Bob, can you like talk about who is the audience for this? Like, and what are we hoping to accomplish with the actual presentation?
Um, First of all, the audience was a combination of both, in the case of Harvard, a number of people from Harvard, certainly the planning board, but frankly, a number of people from other towns, including Bolton and probably 3 or 4 other towns. It is very publicized. It was viewed to be something that people needed to understand a whole lot better before they move forward on it. Um, Early in the game, they brought in primarily a number of developers and engineers who provided comments. Mostly, it finally resulted in, we'd like to do this by right, make it as definitive as you possibly can, rather than a special permit process. And then there was probably an hour and a half presentation on the whole philosophy behind it, number of projects that have been done, what they looked like before, using normal guidelines, regulations, et cetera, in the various towns in which they had been implemented, and what the net result was after implementing this approach. And then actually everybody went out and got something to eat. And then came back in. And the second part was, for me anyway, as important, if not more so. I wouldn't say more so. You had to understand the first part to do the second part. And the second part was a hands-on approach in which Randall divided the group up into individual tables, anywhere from 3 to 5 or maybe 6 people. He had a very, very large plot plan provided to each of the tables. And it would also indicated what the terrain was of the particular example he was going to use. And then based on what he had presented in the earlier presentation, he gave you um, icons for different types of housing, um, and road access, et cetera. And then everybody got together and came up with their own version, hopefully based on what he had presented earlier. And then he fairly briefly, first of all, it was a real example. So he provided what actually had happened in using the four-stage process that he had espoused and presented, and then got feedback from the audience on why theirs looked different, and what their perspective was. So it was talking heads in the beginning, a little bit of sustenance, and then a hands-on, gee, how would we actually use this? And a critique of what people had done.
So, I mean, so we've reviewed the document with him, right? Like that's the document that he's discussing about how you know,
Yep.
which is mostly like geared towards planning boards, right? Or are you expecting like regular people to go and
Oh yeah, no, it was there. The planning board was there, but it was
yeah,
mostly regular people.
and what are they getting out of it?
Or whether they wanted to move forward, and it was an advocacy program as much as anything else, because people really didn't understand what it was all about.
I think wasn't it more of a regionally advertised thing? I know National Audubon speakers
Oh
were
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yep.
So it seems like that's not what I was anticipating for this. They had maybe 5 guest speakers that started the seminar. It's actually recorded and on their website. The lecture part of it is, and the PowerPoint presentation, not the workshop. But they had about an hour presentation, I think, from 4 to 5 of maybe 5 different speakers from the region that spoke on the importance of cluster subdivisions or developments, OSRDs.
And I don't believe that's what he's proposing in this case. I
No.
think he's proposing, a substantially shorter. This is the rationale and the philosophy behind it, and that's what it translates into in actual examples. So all that front end stuff, again, on a regional basis, I don't believe he intends, and I don't believe at this point it would be appropriate for us to do that.
Right.
And so why is he still proposing a 3.5 or a 5 hour?
Well, I think 3.5
meeting?
is, an hour of presentation, some time off, and then a couple of hours of going through the workshop approach is fine. I don't recall that workshop took more than an hour and a half, 2 hours absolute max, including the critique. And there was a fair amount of discussion after people presented their cases, or he walked around and looked at the cases.
And are we kind of tying this specifically to our thinking about bringing up the cottage bylaw again? Is that sort of how that's being targeted?
That was his intention for
Yeah,
it.
yes,
So,
yeah. In short, yes. And so it's PR for that. But again, he made it point, you just selling it, the most important thing is to get people to understand it, and then you can sell it. And I think the upside was that a lot of people came out of his presentation better understanding it and being more of an advocate for it.
Well, I mean, so we're not bringing this bylaw this year. And so does it make sense to do this directly before? I mean, wouldn't we want to do something like this as we get closer to bringing it forward?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think maybe we ought to, before we jump into this, come up with an overall strategy of, how are we going to do it? What's our publicity program going to be? How are we going to present it? And then underlying all of this, an informational program that Randall puts together. And I wouldn't be surprised if he were willing to delay this thing fairly substantially, if we tell him that that's the strategy.
Well, I mean, because that's the point, is I don't know, like, I'm not sure who this is geared at. Like, if we're trying to convince people to go with the cottage bylaw, I mean, I don't think it makes sense to do it right now. It's only going to confuse people probably because it's a week before town meeting. They're going to say, hey,
right.
it's something, are you bringing something forward to town meeting? And I mean, then there's the other aspect of just asking someone to commit 4 or 5 hours on a weeknight, which is a lot.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could maybe split this up. It sounds like there's like a public advocacy that makes sense to do closer to when we're going to bring forth a new, bylaw. And then maybe there's a more, geared towards us, looking at maps and understanding things a bit better. Maybe we can split them up into two separate things, do something in the near term, and then push off the second half of it to when it makes more sense. It also shortens it too.
Yeah, to me, the most interesting part of this was having read the books and understood the number of examples that he had gone through and other people had gone through using this philosophy. The presentation was interesting, but the hands-on workshop was way more interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of think what I would love to do is use Randall and his expertise as it gets closer to bringing the cottage bylaw, because I think he had some good feedback on what we did. He can probably provide better examples and might be a good resource for us to like put in front of the public to say, hey, here's why we want to do this kind of zoning bylaw. So if that's the case, I would suggest that we hold off on the May 1st meeting and try to clarify what we're really trying to do with that. I mean, I think if we tie this more to the cottage bylaw,
Well, I
that'll
think
work
part
out
of,
better for us.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I think part of what he would like to get across is the whole inverted process, the four-step process of development in a subdivision period, and then getting more specifically involved in the cottage bylaw.
But I mean, that bit of it, the four-step develop, that really applies only to us, right? That's not
Right.
going to apply to most, normal people just showing up because they're interested in that. I mean, I think it's useful for him to talk about that. We can talk about, because we don't generally discuss what our philosophy is towards helping people shape subdivisions. So I think that would be great for him to do, but again, that's more for us than for just regular people in town.
Well, yeah, I'd agree in terms of being equipped to implement something and having an understanding of the philosophy behind it. But I think it would be very useful also to articulate the philosophy to those who are interested, who are going to come to town meeting, who are going to come to our hearings, and who are going to be knowledgeable advocates of this approach. And I think that's, and getting, as I think I've demonstrated with this board, getting people to read the books is probably not a great way of doing it. To have a reasonably succinct, articulated presentation to understand, why you would start with understanding the land and then figuring out the development, as opposed to parceling out the elements of the development, looking at a phosphorus approach, and then working around the environment instead of working with it is something that I think a lot of people don't understand, but would be willing to listen to, and underlies a lot of what we're talking about.
Well, I think if it's used in service of saying, hey, you may be worried about clustered subdivisions or dense housing, but here's the manner, in which we're going to see that it gets done in town,
Yeah,
using
and that's
part of Randall's things.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You've made my point for me. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we should postpone this. Sorry, go ahead, Pam.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we have a grant deadline that we have to abide by. So we have to expend our funds. There's two parts to it. We were awarded $7,000 through a grant program that expires June 30th. So we have to expend that $7,000. The town has match that requirement with a $1,250, but we have additional time to expend the town fund portion.
Well, would it make sense to have, dare I say, the philosophical underlying discussion sometime in June? And then when we get into the details of the cottage overlay approach, do that as we further develop the proposal for town meeting and sell it?
Yeah,
I think that works. Yeah.
If Randall's willing to do that and we can extend the contract and roll over the town allocation, then
yeah, I have no idea how you extend the contract. I've never done that.
Well, and that's just a matter of, does he need to finish the presentation before we pay him? Is that what the restriction is there?
No, it goes further than that. We don't have the money to pay him after June 30th.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay. I mean, the last thing I want is for anyone to get confused and think that this is something that we're trying to bring forward for this town meeting. Because then people are going to show up and be like, what do you mean? You know, I didn't see this. And doing it in June might work. I mean, it's after town meeting. If we catch people before summer break, you know,
I think I think there's a general, I don't know, I think there is an impression, I don't know how general it is, that the planning board is spending a lot of time enforcing regulations, dealing with difficult developers, et cetera, and that they would like to see more about what's going on behind the scenes in terms of a different approach, a different philosophy, or a philosophy that will evolve into specific recommendations at town meeting. And I think preparing people for that by showing that, yeah, the planning board's planning and we're developing, you know, a philosophy and an understanding. We're not just a permitting board, we are a planning board, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. But okay, so maybe shoot for something in June, more targeted towards so are we talking about breaking it up into two pieces, or just doing it in June and focusing more around introducing cottage?
Yeah, I think maybe mentioning the cottage as what would evolve from this conversation would be useful in June, but I think it needs to be more of the underlying approach and philosophy in June, and then when we know what we're selling, sell it.
Okay. So Pam, maybe you can work with Randall and we can try to find some time in June that works.
Yeah. Do we still, given the I still think it's going to be a few hours. We want to stick with a weeknight, a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what we did. I thought in Harvard we did it during a weeknight, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think it was 4 to 9 on a weeknight. I don't recall which night of the week it
and
was.
Incidentally, I didn't go to the front end of that.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what other people got out of it, but I got a great deal in the after dinner portion. Maybe I felt more sustenance at that point. I don't
know. While we're, kind of on the OSRD stuff. So I'm just dropping a link into the chat if you guys can see this. So I added some photos to our Google Drive of a place called Cortlandt Lane in Harvard. It's up by the Rotary where the Wendy's and the Alltown Fresh is. I don't know if you guys know where that is.
Yeah.
So just as you're going into Ayer, basically. And I saw them doing construction on this, probably sometime last year, and it stuck in my mind. So I went back up the other day and took some pictures of it. And it's a 20-unit subdivision of shared houses, and it's got a lot of the details that even Randall talked about, where it was having drive, like almost like an alley. So the houses are facing, they're connected houses. Can you guys see the drive? All right. Okay. houses are facing each other. They have kind of alleyways behind them where the garages sit. And it's a really nice little development. And so this is, you know, kind of exactly sort of what I had in mind for a cottage. You know, it's one aspect of what cottage overlay could look like, right? So there I think it's 4 attached buildings to each one. I looked up some Zillow stuff, and they're about 2,200 or 2,300 square feet. Great size. They certainly, I wouldn't call them affordable by any means, but like maybe it's affordable for Harvard. So anyway, this, you know, this is, I think it's nice to have an example like this right in our backyard that, you know, we could use to sort of flesh out some of the stuff with our own. And Pam, I was wondering if you could look at, you know, look at Harvard, maybe reach out to that planner if you know them, and sort of see what zoning they used for this, and see if they had any. Like, I'm not even. I don't know how big that parcel is. Maybe 5 acres. Sort of tough to tell. But you know, I mean, I'll let the, you know, anyone on the board can
Sure.
add into it here. But you know, what do you guys think? Is this the sort of dense housing that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I mean,
Anything?
if you can put that kind of housing in, you know, if we can possibly make it affordable, I don't know how you do that with developers these days.
Yeah.
Um, that would be great. But if you can save a lot of open space by having concentrated housing in one area, I mean, it goes back to a village approach, practically a European approach.
Yeah, and I mean that one overhead shot from Zillow. It's, you know, it's those houses are about as densely clustered as you can get. Um, and this, I think that picture was from pre-construction. It looks like, because I don't think
Right.
there's a
Yeah.
road in there at the time. But anyway, still, I mean, it looks, based on the parcel, there looks like a lot of open space there.
Yeah, and you know, Mark O'Hagan has done a lot of that. And his stuff looks pretty similar to this
Where's his
in
developments?
Bolton.
The which one? The one on Sugar Road?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
he has one on 117 in Stowe as well,
Okay.
with
Yeah.
the
So anyway,
same philosophy, you know, that we see the garages, but when you come to the house from their driveway up front, you don't see garages.
yeah.
Some of that philosophy is reflected in that.
Did you see any shared water or septic anywhere? I'm
I mean,
curious to know.
it's that dense. It has to be.
It has to
I
be,
don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
if it's possible that they have access to air, sewer, or water. I'm not sure. Like, um, but if not, it definitely has to be shared water and septic. They're so dense.
I believe in Stowe, Mark put in a fairly significant wastewater treatment facility there.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that big red barn or big barn that seems to have no other purpose, I believe, hidden in there is that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So again, I drove past this the other day, and I stopped and took some pictures. Just, I mean, this is what I have in mind for
Yeah,
trying to
and it
show
meets the
people. I think it's.
philosophy, doesn't it? I mean,
Yep, I think, and I mean, they're sold out totally.
yeah.
And so, I mean, this, I think this is the kind of housing people want. And again, the affordability of it that's a different story. But I do like the limits on it of like 2,300 square feet I think that's really good.
Yeah, and if you can figure out how, first of all, developing something like this in a pretty compact area makes construction an awful lot simpler. And
Hmm.
also, if you're replicating a design, that also makes it an awful lot simpler. So there may be ways of working with developers to get the price down without sacrificing the quality
Yeah.
simply because of the consistency of design and the compactness of the site.
Yeah. So Pam, I was just going to see if you could get any information you could find on specifically what zoning they used for it. And then we could, possibly think about that as we're writing the cottage overlay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had on that. Anything else that people want to talk about on cottage overlay or presentation?
Just the cottage overlay bylaw, the former one that Randall edited, is still in the Google Drive for review and comment.
Okay, you just put up a revised version of your comments, didn't you, Pam?
Yes.
Okay. So that's worth looking at. I mean, you brought up some interesting questions there.
This is the one dated 2/29.
I think I put a link to it in the email with the agenda for this meeting, but
yeah, there are 4 files, and the most current one is the one that's most useful.
Okay, the one in cottage overlay, the Randall Arendt recommendations one.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Look through that.
And Pam commented on a number of the elements of that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, next item, release of driveway securities. Anything notable about these, Pam?
yeah, I'm going to actually request you continue this to our next meeting.
Okay.
The DPW director had some comments. They're quite old. These securities are from a few years ago. So he thought they were okay currently, but he hasn't had a chance to go out and confirm. So I'm just going to request that you continue release of the driveway.
Sure.
Security.
Yeah, we can take that up at the next meeting.
Okay.
Farm Road is a fairly new little development. I believe that's that's that 40B development that
I think it's only 4 units. Is that? Yeah.
That's the one. And I think we might have released some of those already, but I don't remember. Okay, but yeah, we'll let you get more information and then we can get back to those. So that brings us to town planner report.
Yeah. Just to give you an update on the MVP Derby Field project, we have a draft of the documents. The project team got together and provided the consultant with some comments, and the proposed plans, they're not definitive, they're still in draft format, are going to be presented for the first time. They'll be at the parade for the baseball teams that march through town on April 27th. And the town will have a little table there. Lisa Sheppel from Parks and Rec will be there to obtain public comment. I think Rebecca may be able to attend as well. So we'll have the maps displayed, some explanation of the project, and some requests for input on the preliminary plans. After that, the consultant will revise the plans and we'll do a greater public forum input session. But we thought that was a good place to kind of reveal the plans on the first shot and get some public input from the people that would be utilizing the fields.
That's great.
And Rebecca also put in for an addendum to our grant through the MVP program that's funding this to entail stormwater design so we can be more construction ready. We thought we'd have the match from the 40B development. They've agreed to contribute some money to the town for construction of the field. But the contribution of funds is tied to the issuance of a building permit, and that project is running delayed. So we weren't able to obtain those funds and utilize it for the stormwater system or irrigation plan. So we're hoping to get additional money for that through an addendum to our grant.
Okay. And so that's tied to the apartment complex piece of it, not the office.
The town's contribution, we had a share contributed to the grant award. You can do soft share. It doesn't have to be a monetary match. But the funds didn't come in time, so we're using our staff time to act as a soft match for the grant requirement.
Okay. And just sorry, while you're talking about that, so the apartment construction is still delayed. Do they have a?
Yeah, we're expecting them to come forward and start construction in late spring, they said. So we're coming up on that. It's going to take a while to get the building plans reviewed, so they're expecting to submit those soon. The 580 Main Street just got their demolition permit for the portion of the office park about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that portion of the project is moving forward, and they're expected to be close behind. We actually met with the applicant and the trails committee to discuss rerouting some of the trails that run through the parcel, and they're going to help us plan and relocate the trail system.
Okay. So yeah, it looks like they've been getting the office ready for a little while now for the demo.
Yeah.
So you think that's going to start pretty soon?
The 40B?
No,
The
no,
office
the
is
demolition
started.
of the office. Yeah.
Yeah, it should start anytime now.
Okay.
All their permits were awarded.
Yep.
And then Cultivate's running a little behind too, but they are under construction. We did kind of a mini tour of what they had in place so far. All the flooring and ventilation systems are done. The security cameras are installed. They actually can't get approved by the Cannabis Control Commission until their store is ready to go. So they have to get the systems all in place, inspected, and then bring the product in and then get another re-inspection. So they're not expecting to open until July.
Okay.
Pam, what about the facility at the old what's it now called, at the other end of Main Street at besides Stowe on 117?
What was
manufacturing facility?
Yeah.
The abandoned.
That one.
I don't know of anything going on or proposed there.
Yeah, someone got pretty far along and then they backed out.
Yeah.
But
was that supposed to be
at this point?
I'm sorry, what's that?
That's dead at this point?
Was that the cannabis facility, the grow facility?
Yeah.
That, as far as I know, that was stopped a long time ago. There was a required zone change, I thought, that didn't go through due to some neighborhood opposition.
I didn't realize that.
No, I don't think it was.
Or was it the special permit? I don't remember.
I think just the business the plan fell apart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think we ever disapproved anything. They good.
No.
I don't think it got to. I wasn't involved. I just, from what I heard, that there was some neighborhood opposition, and they didn't pursue the application.
Yeah, it wasn't a zoning issue, but they never even came.
Okay.
They never got to the point where they came before us. I think they started to negotiate the impact fee with the select board, and then, like Eric said, I think their business, I think things got more expensive, and so they backed off.
The Cannabis Control Commission has significantly altered their host agreement requirements.
Yeah.
Communities can only collect impact fees now if you have an invoice that is directly related to costs incurred from the cannabis facility. So you can't just claim that police have been impacted by them locating in your community. You have to show receipts. So something like a detail that was required to control traffic just for that facility into that facility would be required. So they've become really strict on what you can collect. And one community, I think it was Uxbridge or Oxford. It was Oxford, I believe. Reimbursed their cannabis facility for what funds they had already collected.
Oh wow!
Through results of a lawsuit.
So I didn't realize it. So it retroactively affects host agreements.
Well, that resulted in litigation, and that was the settlement. So the community retroactively agreed to reimburse the cannabis business for impact fees that were already collected. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't a court ruling, but communities are pretty worried about the impacts that could have moving forward.
Yeah. So what does that mean for us? Are we not?
I don't. I'm not sure that we'd be collecting impact fees at this point, with a chance that we'd have to reimburse.
But we negotiated just
the business. So have all the other facilities. So they really thought that the impact fees were becoming quite arbitrary and a little bit extortionate.
Oh yeah.
little bit of extortion. So they've been pretty strict about it. And so if we don't incur costs that are a direct result of them opening, I don't think we'd be collecting fees, but that's not up to me. That's up to the town administrator.
Okay.
Good question. How big are these impact fees typically? Is it a percentage or a fixed amount or something?
Percentage of the business or percentage of the sales.
No, we still collect those. That's a
Oh,
sales
okay.
tax that we will always collect. Yes.
Okay.
When you get your host agreement, some communities historically have been charging impact fees, saying you locating in our town is going to affect our public safety department. So we think it's going to be $25,000 and we need that for a new truck
I see.
And so that I'm just making that up. I don't know exact, but things along those lines. So that type of charge is no longer acceptable. And those fees occur when the community signs an agreement with the business to be located in the municipality.
Gotcha.
So you're still eligible to collect the sales tax.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Did you have anything else, Pam, on your report?
No, that was it.
Okay. We had approval of minutes on there. I don't remember seeing any minutes.
Yeah, I didn't get to that. You're probably going to have about 4 at our next meeting. I'm sorry. Lauren's going to help me get caught up. We've fallen a little behind with the minutes.
Did the AI assistant help you out at all?
No, that I couldn't get that to work.
Bummer. Okay, so that's really the end of what we had scheduled tonight. Anything else that people want to discuss? I think our next meeting, so we're looking at the 24th, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any rumblings on the horizon of any development, anything, Pam, coming
No
in?
new applications that I'm aware of. The ZBA has an application coming in, I think, for a development on Werner Avenue. They're creating 2 parcels, and one of them has a hiking trail that owner has allowed through their privately held land. So we're working with them to try and obtain the land as they create the lots to transfer to the Bolton Conservation Trust, I think is the way that will work. And
Okay.
Mallard Lane is applied for a building permit. That's a 40B that was permitted through the Board of Appeals. They've started construction quite a while ago, but they haven't started construction of any buildings yet. So they've applied for their first building permit and should get that in shortly. They just have some recordings of regulatory agreements they have to get filed at the registry. And then Martha has.
Oh, sorry, Pam. Just real quick on that. How do they access that property? Is that from Harvard Road? Does anyone know how to get to that? That Mallard Lane one?
Let me take a look.
No big deal.
Okay. I was there. I forget. I just...
It's the one behind the town common, right? That parcel back there?
Behind the town common. No.
No? Okay. Maybe
no. That's off of South Bolton Road as well, I believe.
Yeah, those 8 units or whatever.
It's 8 units. It's a commonly held parcel that'll be maintained by a homeownership association. They have a shared septic, but individual wells.
Okay.
And it's 55 and over.
Sorry, I cut you off. You want to talk about the Martha subdivision?
Yeah, they've applied for a building permit too, but they have quite a bit of work to do before they can even start construction. But I'll keep you informed as that moves forward.
That one, there was some question about, I think they're going to have to come to us for a common driveway. You and I can talk offline about that one.
Okay.
Pam. Like in their filings, it looked like they were gonna need a common driveway, but I don't think we approved that ever during the.
No, it specifically says in the special permit conditions of approval, if they propose the common driveway, they'll
Okay.
have to come back. Yeah.
Okay, all right, great.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't have anything else. If anyone else, anything else to discuss?
Mike, I won't be able to attend the meeting on the 24th.
Okay. All right, just let me know if anyone else can't make it, but otherwise we should be good. Okay, if there's nothing else, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Thank
guys.
you.
Sam.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Thanks.